Hello. Among young people, a popular saying, "not in this life," was a trend when things in their lives didn't go their way. When young people should be full of hope. How hard life must have been for them to say that. But after living for a while, I also had a period where I used to think that way. Of course, I do not think that way now. Even if children fall, they quickly brush it off and get up. But when I became an adult, why was it so hard? I was fearful of falling, and even though I knew it was the wrong way, like a fool, I covered my ears and eyes and only looked ahead and ran. That was what led me to a direction of not in this life. I got divorced earlier this year. Actually, it was several years before I decided to divorce. It was from the beginning of my marriage, but being a divorcee was proof that my life had failed, and I was afraid to admit it, so I tried to endure the unhappy marriage. Then I couldn't take it any longer and decided to divorce. It was because of my mom. As her daughter, I didn't feel that I should put my mom's life in turmoil rather than be happy. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she just lived her life because of me, as she lost her dream and her family by getting pregnant with me. My mother once dreamed of becoming a pianist. She was a college student who was about to study in Europe. She started playing the piano when she was 7 years old, and her whole life was dedicated to becoming a pianist. But a period of rebellion came onto my mom belatedly, and she met a guy from whom she got pregnant with me. My maternal grandpa found out later and recommended that my mom get an abortion. How could an unmarried girl get pregnant and have a baby? And how could you study playing the piano abroad with a baby with you? Just think of it as a mistake. Just think of all the efforts you put into your career. But my mom couldn't. She left home and went to look up her boyfriend. However, he was getting ready to go into the army and denied that he was the father of her baby. Do you have evidence that you are pregnant with my baby? Aren't you just trying to pin it on me when you are pregnant by someone else? I am only 20 years old. I have no reason to be responsible for you and your unborn child, and your unborn baby. So do it as your father says. When he flirted with my mom, her boyfriend acted as if he would give up his life for her. But when he heard that she got pregnant, he became the coldest guy and turned away from her. My mom, who had sweet dreams with her love for over a year, was shocked, and she decided to disappear with her unborn baby from this world forever. But she couldn't. The moment my mother had a bad thought, she felt me moving to her surprise. She said it was as if I was struggling because I didn't want to die. So she thought she had to live somehow, and she went to see her childhood piano teacher. Her teacher was very kind and warm to my mom because my grandma had passed away early, and my mom was yearning for motherly love. The teacher was widowed early and was living alone without any children. So she took my mom in, and my mom gave birth to me at her teacher's house and was able to raise me there. At the time, her piano teacher was old, so she retired from running the piano academy. So my mom ended up running her piano academy on her behalf. While my mom gave lessons, her teacher was babysitting me in the house. Thanks to my mom taking over the piano academy, she had no problem making a living for all three of us. But as time passed, strange rumors started to spread in her neighborhood. The rumor was that my mom had an affair as a mistress to an executive of a corporation, and she was hiding from the wife of the executive and was raising a daughter. The teacher who heard the rumor went to see the owner of the dry cleaner, who was the source of the rumor. She told him that if he continued to spread baseless rumors, she would call the executive's wife and prove that her daughter was not a mistress. The teacher, who was a kind and warm person, took my mom and me in and raised us as her own. She was like a ferocious grandmother to us, protecting us from the rumors and the troublemakers in the neighborhood. She continued to run the piano academy until the year I entered high school, when she passed away. The teacher often told me while she was alive, every time I see an old fortepiano that the teacher used to play, I often remember what she used to say to me. This piano was bought for me by my father when I was a child. It's old and the sound is different from today's piano, so other students try not to play this piano. However, there was one student who especially liked this piano. It was your mother. She liked it because the sound was different and the keyboard depth was different from other pianos. What a 7-year-old kid would know that? I knew then she was a special one who knows the real value of a thing. As your mother gave up her dream and decided to protect you, it was for the same reason that you are a special child worthy enough. Your mother knew it in advance. So be proud of yourself and live confidently. Living under my mother's last name without knowing my father's face, the teacher always told me to be confident. But I was often easily intimidated, even when I tried to act confident, because at a young age, it becomes a weakness that is difficult to overcome. When I was different from others, I never once missed my dad, but I often felt the need for having a father. It was a part of my life that my mom could not fill, no matter how hard she tried, especially after the teacher passed away and I was living alone with my mom. When our piano academy had to be repaired due to water leakage, the construction company knew that there was no man in the house, so they delayed the construction and demanded higher fees. Or when there was a fight over a parking space, the nasty neighbor demanded compensation from us baselessly. Whenever that happened, I used to wish that I was born as a man. If so, I felt I could be a little help for my poor mom who was up against so many nasty people. Maybe that's why I rushed into getting married. Instead of pursuing my dreams, I just wanted to find a man who would become the protector of our household. Looking back now, I have no idea how I could have thought so foolishly. I met my husband when I interned at a company right after graduating from college. My husband and I worked in the same department. He had been working there for 2 years. He was not particularly talented, but he had a good personality, so he had a good reputation among his colleagues and management at work. He was popular with the interns as well. Usually full-time employees of the company treated him with respect and kindness. Interns were treated to be there for a short period. It was an atmosphere where interns were thought of as part-timers and were often given menial tasks. However, my husband was different. He sincerely tried to teach me and would often buy me coffee and snacks. After the internship period, 3 interns, including myself, were offered permanent positions. It was then that my husband confessed his feelings for me, saying, "Didn't you know that I like you, Bonnie? I bought you so many cups of coffee and snacks, but you never seemed to notice me. A guy doesn't invest in a girl like that unless he's interested in her." It turned out that everything he did for the interns was to get my attention. He trained me differently from other supervisors because he wanted me to stay with the company. I did have feelings for him, so when he confessed, I could no longer hide my true feelings. We ended up dating secretly and at work. He was cordial as my superior, but off work, we were a loving couple. Since there were only 2 women living in our household, we often needed a man's help with little repairs. Whenever we needed him, my boyfriend would come over and change light bulbs, unclog the sewer system, or repair electric plugs. To my mom, he was like a dependable son, and to me, he was a strong boyfriend. We dated for over 3 years, and I eventually got promoted to an assistant manager position, which allowed us to get married. They say you can tell a lot about a man by looking at his father, but I believe it also depends on each individual case. Unlike my husband, his father was a very calculating man who was greedy for money and acted rudely towards anyone he thought had no money. To him, my family was nothing to be proud of. He sneered at our financial situation from the beginning when he first met my family before the wedding. He said, "I became a widower at the age of 39 and raised my 3 children all by myself." Through that, I learned one thing. A parent must have money. If I don't have any money, my children will be looked down upon in this world. Other people will disrespect them. I have a lot of money because I have worked, if my life depended on it, all for my children. However, as a parent, what have you done? You live without owning a house in your name. I heard that you are just leasing a guest house attached to the piano academy. How can you act like a proper parent like that? I'm not saying this because of the wedding or wedding gift expenses. Those things, the kids could buy them as they earn money after they are married. The real problem is that I'm concerned that you'll have to depend on our kids later. So, promise me right now that you would never ask for a handout from our children. How about it? Can you promise? Because of his father's rude demands, my husband's face was flushed. "Dad, what are you saying? If something happens to our parents, as children, of course we could help out. What's wrong with that? Apologize to my mother-in-law right now." "You fool. Is your money just yours? Do you know how much of my money went into buying your newlywed house? Don't you know that you reap what you sow? I invested my money, but why should your mother-in-law reap the benefits of my investment? I won't accept that." Then my mom quietly said, "I understand what you're saying. As you said, I have done nothing, so how shamelessly could I receive help from the children? Such a thing won't happen, so please don't get upset." Only after my mom promised, my father-in-law lifted the fork to eat. I should have checked what kind of person my husband's father was in advance, and I felt sorry forever that I didn't do that. He was into real estate, selling and buying houses. He would buy a house or a piece of land very cheaply, and either remodel or build a new house to resell at a much higher price. Originally, he was a loan shark working at a large flea market. But during the economic downturn, he couldn't get people to pay their loans, so he foreclosed on them and auctioned off their houses or land to enrich himself. That was the best of times because I had money coming in bags. Everyone had a hard time during the economic downturn, but I was rolling high. I wish it would come again. He would say things like that, so you can imagine what a greedy person he was, only thinking of himself getting rich off of someone else's demise. Even after we were married, he was always prying into our affairs, checking to see if my mom was getting any help from us. He would often just drop in at the piano academy that my mom was running. He said he was just worried since my mom was living alone. But don't I know him better than that? He would blatantly ask how many students were enrolled at the academy. Many students were enrolled, and she charged a certain amount for their enrollment. Whenever a student dropped out, my father-in-law would make a big deal out of it and nag at my mom. I couldn't understand why he was so concerned about it. I suggested that we distribute more advertising flyers or encourage students to refer their siblings or friends to the academy. But my father-in-law seemed to think that closing the doors was the only option. It was frustrating for my mom, but she kept her feelings to herself because she didn't want me to find out about his rude behavior. One day, when I went home to celebrate my mom's birthday, the neighbor who ran a beauty shop next door told me about my father-in-law's behavior towards my mom. I was shocked and immediately went to see my husband. I told him to talk to his dad and make him stop, and if he ever went to see my mom again, I would cut ties with him. Thankfully, he stopped bothering my mom, but I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. It was all because of me. My mom tried to comfort me, saying that if the academy was doing well, I would benefit from it. But not long after, my mom's piano academy had to close its doors. A major chain of piano academies had opened up in the neighborhood, and many students left to enroll there. The decreasing number of students combined with the competition made it too difficult for my mom to keep the academy open, but she didn't tell us the real reason. She was worried that we would be alarmed. After the academy closed, my mom started playing the piano for singing classes or at weddings on weekends to make ends meet. But even that had to stop when she developed nerve damage in her fingers, a chronic ailment that prevented her from playing the piano. When I went home one weekend and saw the dusty pianos, I knew something was wrong. I asked my mom about it, and that's when she finally confessed everything to me. But she reassured me that she could take care of herself, and that the doctor said she would be able to work again soon with proper treatment. Even though she tried to downplay it, I couldn't help but worry about her. But how could she play the piano again with an ailment that she'd been suffering from for over 10 years? So when I told that to my husband, he said we should have her live with us. I was grateful to him for saying that, but I was worried about his stingy father's reaction. And I knew that my mom would refuse it. So I just thanked him for saying that. Only then, I told my mom that I would help out by taking a small part of my pay to give to her for her living expenses. My husband also agreed with it. I thought we had taken care of it quietly, but my husband went to see his dad and told him that he wanted to have my mom live with us. Then he found out about my mom's situation. And would he remain quiet after hearing that? He rushed over to my mom, and when my husband ran over after hearing that his dad went to see my mom, but it was after his father started attacking my mom with his rude words. This is why I was worried. I don't know if you remember what you promised before the kids got married. Saying with your own mouth that you would never get any help from the children. Do you remember? If you promised, you should keep it. As for me, a person who can't even make a living for oneself is like an insect. Just because your fingers hurt when the rest of your limbs are fine and healthy, how could you quit working and taking money from your children? I can't put up with that as long as I am alive and my 2 eyes are open. Father, how could you say that? Are you saying that my mom is an insect? Apologize to my mom now. And my mom has never taken any money from us. She even declined to get any spending money from me. Just because my mom is resting while she's in pain, does she have to hear that from you? It's not as if any of your or your son's money got spent, and she's living on her own. So why do you butt in rudely like this? I don't know what your son said, but my mom has no wish to live with us. So apologize right now. I was so furious when he called my mom an insect and screamed at my father-in-law without realizing it. But he looked at me displeased and without saying any apologies, just left. My mom told me that it was all her fault and asked me to apologize to my father-in-law. Mom, why should I apologize? He's the one who did wrong. You are not responsible or guilty, but why do you act like that? If you give in to him, he'll think our family is beneath his feet, that he can trample on. So don't lower your head. Head in front of him. If you're like that, it's hard for me too. I also was a bad daughter who said those things and had my mom face such kind of treatment from my rude father-in-law. I thought for the first time that if I continued this marriage, my life would not be happy. What the young people say these days, not in this life. After that, my husband and I cut off going to my in-laws. I felt like I couldn't control my anger if I saw my father-in-law's face again. Then, a few months later, it was nearing Thanksgiving Day. I called my older sister-in-law to ask what I should cook for the holidays. Truthfully, I didn't want to do anything for the holidays. But I felt I should do my duties as a daughter-in-law, so I couldn't just ignore it. My sister-in-law, who answered my call, said something in an awkward voice. She hesitated many times before she said it. I'm not sure I should be telling you this, but are you gonna let your mother keep doing that job? I feel sorry for her. What job? I asked. Didn't you know that starting last month, your mom has been working as a house cleaning lady at your father-in-law's house? I was shocked. I dropped by there to give him some clothes I bought for him, and I was so shocked. At first, I thought it was someone who looked like your mom, but the way she talked to our father-in-law, it was indeed your mom. Our father-in-law kept saying at every sentence that as a parent, she should earn her own keep and pay for her food. He said that leaning on your child was acting like a leech. I was so embarrassed for her that I felt really sad listening to that myself. After I hung up the phone, I just stood there trembling. I thought it was strange that she was never home whenever I went by her house. I didn't know that she was working as a maid at my father-in-law's house. I was so upset that I collapsed on the floor and sobbed so loudly that my husband, who was watching TV, was surprised and asked what was wrong. I told him what his sister-in-law said, and he dropped his head and sighed loudly. Then my husband and I went over to his dad's house, but I was so upset that my tears wouldn't stop. If I hadn't gotten married, my mom would not be treated like that, and I was so sorry and hated myself for it. But when we arrived at my father-in-law's house, an unexpected situation was happening. An old man was swinging his cane at my father-in-law, shouting, "You are worse than any worms. I knew you were the worst, who knew nothing but money. But I didn't know to this extent. Even if you were nothing but an animal, how could you make your in-laws to be a maid at your house? How dare you treat my only daughter like that, you bastard? I'm so sorry, sir. Had I known that she was your daughter, I would never have done that. I did it not knowing that she was your daughter. So please don't be so angry. I didn't know that my son's mother-in-law had a rich father like you, and I made a big mistake. I didn't put her to work without paying her. I paid her the wages of a cleaner. She refused to be paid, My son did give her some spending money, so that's almost like as if my money was given to her. So, when we think about it, you and I are in-laws too. In-laws are family, so why not sell the piece of your land to me? Since you didn't know your daughter was alive for the past 30 years, please consider it as if you are giving the land to your granddaughter and sell the land to me. If I die, that land will be inherited by your grandson-in-law, so isn't it all going around? Are you blabbering with that stupid mouth of yours? In-laws, I'll never be that. Now that I know it, do you think I'll be your in-laws? Even if I make my granddaughter a widow, I refuse to be in-laws with you. Kathy, what are you doing? Put on your clothes. Never even talk to a boorish household like theirs and cut off your ties with them. What are you saying? Cut off the ties? I'm sorry. If I don't get their land, I can't build the townhouse complex. I got a huge loan to buy all the land around your land. So please reconsider once, please. If you don't want to become my in-laws, I'll get the kids to get divorced immediately. But please sell that piece of land to me, please. The old man dragged my mom and went out. My father-in-law followed after them and grabbed him, pleading for his forgiveness, but to no avail. That day I followed the old man with my mom to his house. It was the house where my mom was born and grew up. The land my father-in-law was vying for was the land that was owned by my maternal grandfather. He brought my grandfather to his house to treat him to dinner, and my grandfather saw my mom working there as a maid. And when he lived not knowing where she was for over 30 years and bumped into her working as a maid, my grandma hit the roof in anger, and he was furiously swinging the cane at my father-in-law for treating his in-laws as his maid. My grandpa held my hand and wept for a long time. He said that he almost did something terrible to me when I had grown up so pretty. After my mom left home, he said that he could never sleep comfortably, worrying about my mom. He kept apologizing to my mom and me. My mom also apologized. She was immature and was a bad daughter to her father. She pleaded for his forgiveness too. After the father-daughter reunion after 30 years, many things changed. My mom moved into her father's house, and I got divorced. When I thought of my husband, I didn't want to get divorced. But when I thought about his despicable father, I couldn't live with him any longer. My husband said that he would sever his ties with his father, but that wasn't easy. Even though he may do it because of the circumstances, how could a father and son sever their ties just like that? So, despite being in tears, I had to get divorced from my husband. After my divorce, it felt uncomfortable to work at the same company with my ex-husband, so I left the company. Now I have adapted well to my new company. My ex-husband calls me often. It'll be hard to cut him off suddenly, but with time, the pain will be healed. After we got divorced, my ex-father-in-law still called me several times, asking me to persuade my grandpa to sell the land to him. Of course, I refused flatly. He was obsessed with money, and when he invested all of his money into that development project, it was doomed to fail without my grandpa's land. So how desperate he must be. He even threw tantrums in front of my grandpa's front door, and he got dragged off by the police after neighbors called and reported him. Then from a while ago he stopped coming. The rumor was that he became penniless after he lost everything, but I do not know the details. Once, I thought of my life as a failed one. Not in this life, but it has been reset anew. I think it's better to stop and restart, even though it's hard, than keep going down the wrong path. Just as much as my mom valued my life even before I was born, I plan to live my life worthy of it. Thank you for listening to my long story and always being careful with your health. Please cheer for me and share your words of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscribing is a big help to me. Take care. Thank you for your support.